is the Deputy Society Marshal for Armored Combat with Rebated Blades, Duke Michael of Bedford. And featuring a live performance by Sayyida Laila al-Sanna al-Andalusiyya from the East Kingdom. Me, I'm your announcer, Master Bjorn of the Northern Sea. And here's your host, Master Laertes McBride.
Good evening, everyone. How are y'all doing? It's good to see everyone this nice day, at least here on the West Coast. A little May gray for us, but it's looking pretty good. I want to give a shout out to Bjorn before he comes in. I think these were the longest titles or names combo that we had for the intro, and he got it all in on time. He nailed it. I didn't even have to do anything in the edit to get all that verbiage in. So kudos to you, Bjorn. Couple of little things, and speaking of Bjorn, we'll get him on. Just a reminder that we'll be opening up out here in Caid for official events, practices, etc. Starting on June 1st is the latest news we've gotten. I'm sure there'll be updates coming from their majesties and the Kingdom Seneschal with more details, along with the Kingdom Earl Marshal, who we'll be having on the show here soon to talk about how that part's going to work for reopening. And then coming up as our first event will be Coronation, scheduled for Saturday, July 10th, and the beautiful Barony of Wintermist, followed by Queen's Champion Ranged on July 18th, and Altavia, and the QC Marshal on July 24th, the Barony of Gildenholt. So that's kind of important dates for everyone that lies ahead. I'm sure check with your local areas for how their practices and local meetings are going to open up after June 1st. Also, no pressure on the B&Bs now. Anyway, let's go ahead and bring Bjorn in and see how he's doing. He's going to be here right now. Hey, what is that? That needs to go away. Hey, Bjorn.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Obviously, I'm still having problems pushing buttons. So,
It happens to the best of us.
How are you this fine day?
Well, doing quite well. Just making preparations for the Bardic War and a few other things, and just very excited.
Bardic War. You mentioned Bardic War. Let's get our update of the Bardic War. Here we go. I did it again. So drinks, everyone. Yeah, I was just saying, I'm always looking for a way to kill 45 seconds in our show because we never run long. So here you go. Do you have any updates for Bardic War?
Well, we are really just looking forward to which one of the performers will be working with us this next Monday, while we have already, we'll be deep into the throes of the Bardic War at that point. So all I have to say is that we've been working with the vendors and with the co-event stewards to bring some really exciting things to folks, especially that first weekend. That's all I can say.
Well, since you've alluded to it, your perfect setups this evening. So let's go ahead and announce to our viewers, since y'all get the first whack at it, and we'll do the full announcement a little bit later this evening. So on Saturday, the 15th of May, the first weekend of the war, at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, Bjorn and I will be hosting a game show. And the game show is called What Is It? So we're looking for contestants, and we're going to be reaching out to prior guests on the show to be panelists. And we're going to be running the show, and we'll be doing 3 episodes. So you're thinking, well, what is it? Well, here's what the show is going to be. So we've had merchants supply us with unusual items, period items that they sell. And we're going to have a panel of 2 contestants, along with a panel of 3 celebrities, talking about what these items are. So each of the panel of 3 will give an answer as to what these items are, and the 2 contestants will have to determine who's telling the truth and wager points against it. There'll be 4 rounds. At the end of the 4th round, the winner will be recognized, and we don't know what you're going to get, but other than having fun with us. It will be co-hosted by myself and Bjorn. We will have a live musical accompaniment, and it should be lots and lots of fun, especially with the guest panelists we have describing the items. So if you're going to be interested in being a contestant, just send us an email at livefromcaid@gmail.com. Also, a post will go out not only on our site, but on the Bardic War site, asking for contestants. We're trying to get not only Caid, but a broad swath of contestants to fill in those positions. Along with the panelists will be across the known world too. So it'll be lots of fun. Details are found at bardicwar.org. That's what we got. Should be a good time, Bjorn, don't you think?
Oh, I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, we're going to have Watchmadoodles. I'm sure that's going to be one of them. So, speaking of Watchmadoodles, it's time to talk about the arts and science websites that we have for this week. What do you have for us this week, Bjorn?
Well, one of the first things I wanted to talk about was, although they don't really exist in the same form anymore, for the longest time during the spring, the circus was something of great import. In modern times or early modern times, it was one of the only ways that folks out in various parts of more rural areas would even see an elephant or a tiger. And what it eventually evolved to with Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, and all those other groups, where it started, for the most part, was Rome. And so we found a really neat website called the History of Circus. And in it, it talks about everything from the Roman origins to the contemporary. So some of it is post period, but they talk about a lot of the important things. And of course, there's the Circus Maximus that we know of. Even the most cursory glance will have information about that. But then there is the large circus, one of the largest circuses in ancient Rome that no longer exists. We just know it was there based upon contemporary information, the Circus Flaminius. And that was near the Tiber River. And right now, the space that it once inhabited is now completely covered with modern or, well, relatively modern buildings. But it was 300 meters long. It had a great space for the racing of the horses and also just the various flora and fauna that were shown off. But we don't really know much about its construction based upon what's left, except for the contemporary accounts. Now let's cut forward quite some time to the Circus Macentius. That one was built about 500 years later, and still much of it exists today. As a matter of fact, a lot of the information that we have about how the circus was created, where the tracks were for the chariots and the like, come from the information we have on ground extant from the Maxentius circus. But it's a really, really neat information about that aspect. And I remember going to circuses as a kid. I remember hearing about how they got started and how they evolved into what they evolved into. And some of the things that we now establish as circus acts actually predate Rome, with some of the Etruscan acrobats and the like. But the information on the website's fantastic. I highly recommend that you take a look at it. And so that's website number 1. Now, website number 2 is talking about, well, it is spring. We are getting into summer, but it is spring. And one of the most important aspects for the Middle Ages was the time of the lambs or suckling pigs or all of the new livestock that were being born. and because that's, flights of fancy and the wonders of spring. And medievalist.net has a really neat page about livestock and animal husbandry in early medieval England, and it goes into great detail about all sorts of information regarding the livestock, and it goes into the zoo archaeological record. It's really fascinating. I think it's really neat. In a way, it seems as if medieval landowners in England treated their livestock better than their peasants. But beyond that, I think it's a fascinating website. I think you should go ahead and give it a look because it goes into not just the corporeal landowners, but it also goes into the spiritual landowners, meaning what was it that the monasteries were doing? What was monastic trading like regarding livestock? And I just think that for folks that have that sort of interest, you will enjoy it. It'll be a lot of fun, and that is the second website for this week.
Awesome, thank you. I think animal husbandry means something different in Aidenville. Anyway.
Aidenville, I didn't say it.
I did. And history of circuses. Caid actually has that cornered because we incorporate Circus here in our kingdom, right? So,
yes, Starkoffen, well known.
Yeah, there we go. So I think it's appropriate for us. So anyway, I'm not going to make a segue off of any of that. So who do we have coming up as our first guest?
Our first guest is the Deputy Society Marshal for Armored Combat with Rebated Blades, and that would be His Grace Duke Michael of Bedford.
Oh, great. Well, let's get him on. And he's going to be on right about now. Hello, Your Grace.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm doing very well this evening.
Let's say, and where are you joining us from tonight?
I am joining from North Carolina, town west of Raleigh.
So Atlantia.
Yes.
Very nice. And that's been like your base of operations this whole time, right? Have you been in other kingdoms?
Well, I was started as part of the East. When Atlantia was part of the East, I started there, and then, yes, this has been my home ever since.
So you didn't change kingdoms; the kingdoms changed around you.
Correct.
And how long have you been in the SCA?
Since 1975.
Wow, a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
So you've seen a lot of changes over time.
I have.
And look at this, I can do a segue. And what the program you're in charge of now as the Deputy to the Society Marshal for it is another change, right? An expansion of the armored combat system that we've been doing for all these years, correct?
It is. I mean,
right.
It's offers something else for people who want to play in a different discipline.
So for those unfamiliar with what the Armored Combat with Rebated Blades is, could you kind of give a quick kind of overview of what the program is?
Sure. At base, it's armor, full armor. We don't, it's rigid armor. I mean, it has to be protective, and it's inspected from that standpoint. We use side swords, we use long swords. Shields are limited in size, and we fight full contact.
So you're using steel blades, right, as opposed to rattan.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that requires the extra armor. And for full contact, it's as in body strikes and that type of maneuvers, not just with blades. Is that what you mean?
Yes. I mean, we hit each other with the blades as hard as we want to.
Okay, so is this more like the Battle of Nations, that kind of
similar? Yes, it's very similar to it. The target area is different. We stopped at the knees. We don't count blows, knees, and below. That was to make it more SCA friendly for people crossing over. So the target areas are the same. Okay. The Battle of Nations counts all the way to the ankle. So that's the primary difference between the two. The rule base is very much the same.
Okay.
Reason why is I used a lot of their stuff and brought it over because they already had a lot of experience doing this. So I saw no point in trying to reinvent a program that was already working.
So let's say you had a standard armored combat kit, right? That's putting aside the weapons. So what would be like the difference in the helm that I could use on the regular armor field that I could not use on this rebated blade field? What would be the difference?
The two primary differences would be the thickness of the helmet. We require 12 gauge mild steel or equivalent, and the facial openings. The facial openings cannot exceed 1.125 square inches, or something just a little over 1 inch by 1 inch.
Okay, so I kind of pulled up. I'm gonna. It never looks great on screen, but this is from the rule book, and so these are examples of acceptable helms. Is that what this is?
That is correct.
Okay. And then, like, is the gorget the same, the coverage and everything, as if for regular combat?
Yes, the neck protection is the same. You have to have rigid protection on your spine, neck protection. The difference and the direction we're kind of heading, so I'll just shortchange it. What is the difference in the armor? Okay, you have to have your collarbones have to be covered, your shoulders, your elbows, your forearms, your hands, and with hands you cannot use fingered gauntlets. Fingered gauntlets have a propensity to result in loss of finger when they're struck. So we decided we didn't want to go that way. The body, thighs, knees, and shins. So the only thing I omitted was the rear brace.
Okay. So it is a lot more armor than it would be standard for the rattan version of fighting, but it's because it is, like you said, calibration's higher, the blades are steel, and it's more full contact. So you need that protection, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then for the combat itself, it's judged blows. Is that what it is?
No.
No? Okay.
This is one place where the combat deviates from the traditional fighting. Traditional fighting fighters call their own blows, and the rebated steel judges will call blows for you. The tourney format is there's different tourney formats that are available, but the one in which we've been fighting the most of is 3 1-minute rounds that the fighters fight. They just go at it and hit, and the judges count the strikes, and then they add them up at the end.
Okay. And now let's switch for the weapon. There's 2 categories of weapons that we use, right?
Side sword, which is a single-handed sword. Long sword, 2-handed sword.
Okay. So, and I'm sure there's specifications in the rule book, in the armored combat rule book, about what the blades need to do, much like the steel blades for rapier combat. A certain amount of bend, certain specifications they have to follow.
Well,
right?
the specifications are just about identical to the HMB, the other steel fighting groups. We went with that because those weapons are readily available. Okay.
And so that's a good point. So a lot of the weapons that you're talking about, there's a cottage industry out there to support it, where you can go out and purchase it and kind of get your kit going without having to really kind of make it yourself. So,
no, right? You don't have to make it yourself. I mean, there's plenty of armorers all over the world who are making armor for steel combat. They also make weapons for steel combat. So the items are readily available for purchase, or you can make your own. Now, steel is not required for armor. You can use any combination of materials that you feel safe fighting in, as long as it provides protection to you. Our basic rule is to give an example, something that happens frequently in SCA combat. Someone will be struck in the knee and they go low and they hop around because it hurt. If you do that in rebated steel, your armor just failed and you're done for that round.
Okay. And so I got a couple other questions. So on calibration, like for the armored combat, there's a minimum blow, and then whatever the top end is. So on this one, since it's a valid blow is judged by the judges, what is considered visually a minimum good blow, for lack of a better term? How would they determine that?
Okay, the first thing is force is not a requirement for a blow to be good. It has to be thrown correctly. The criteria we use is 3 joints are employed in throwing the blow, which typically is the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist.
Okay, so the mechanics is basically what determines whether it's a good blow or not.
Yes, and its orientation on contact. I mean, it has to hit.
Right.
It can't slide off. It's got to stick.
Okay, and then has this program opened up to melee combat too, or is it just tournament at this time?
No, there's no melee provisions currently, and we currently have no intentions of going to melee.
Okay, so I got 2 other categories. I'm going to try to leave questions for Bjorn, but I'm just so interested because I heard about the evolution of this program back when I was Society Reaper Marshal and talking to Alan about it, but I didn't know a lot of the details. Like, so can you give an idea on how this evolved, where the kingdoms that it started out, and how long it evolved to get approved in the society book?
Oh yes, I know exactly. I do know because I've been in it since day one.
Yeah.
There was a group of us that liked doing sword combat. We were playing in the cut and thrust arena, but we like to play a little harder than was acceptable within that arena. So we thought, well, maybe there's room for another style of combat. So we started thinking about it. We talked to Alan, and Alan said, "Yeah, I agree. I think we have an opportunity to grow another form of combat." So he gave us some provisions, some limitations to start working within. Let's see. A little bit of blood is okay. Bruising is okay. And broken bones are right out. So that's the parameters we had to work with.
Well, at least you had guidance, right? So how long did the experimental program run? Was it a couple of years?
2 years.
2 years?
Just shy of 2 years. And
how many kingdoms were involved in it?
Initially, it was one. It was Atlantia. We worked through the pain of trying to figure out how much armor we needed, what types of armor worked well, the weapons, and then, of course, the rule set, the base rule set we put together. Then once that was done, then we started working to include it, bring some other kingdoms into the fold. Aethelmark was the first one we brought in. During the experiment we did, and we always did a warm handoff, meaning that we met at an event. We had marshals from the Atlantean program with their marshals to be able to sit down, talk, do some fighting, do some demos, make sure that they had a good understanding of how it worked in practice. East was second to come in. And then the program went live before we brought more. We had another kingdom working to come in at that time. Would have come in at Gulf Wars last year, but Gulf Wars got canceled.
Yeah, there was no Gulf Wars.
They're putting into that.
So, since you've been involved in the beginning, were there any, as you rolled it out to other kingdoms, were there some unexpected challenges or surprises, or was the foundation strong enough that it was a fairly strong and seamless rollout?
No, it was very seamless. Part of it is the rules are very straightforward. They're not complicated. There's not a lot of them. The other thing is the individuals we were working with out of the East and Aethelmark were all had done steel combat before. So this was not an alien concept to them. They had the armor. They had done the combat. So they knew what they were doing. So it made it very easy to do that.
Okay, so I have one little section left, Bjorn, and then I'll leave you questions. Our Kingdom Seneschal for Caid had announced that that we'll be rolling into this program. So given the geographic distance of not being able to do that kind of a warm handoff, What would you, in kind of general terms, what would be the process for us to get up to speed, and what's going to be required for the program to be here? Because I think you touched on either off air or a little bit earlier that even the marshals are different and different requirements. So what, in kind of general steps, what would be the process for a kingdom to sign on to this program?
For someone that far out where a warm handoff might be, say, challenging, there's an implementation plan that's required for all new kingdoms coming into the program. Reason for that is there are some things that are significantly different. The marshals, the standard trained marshals, won't work because the combat format, the style, and everything is completely different. So they would need to. The purpose of the plan is to ensure that they have people overseeing the program to ensure that they have a good understanding of the rules, what is supposed to happen, how it's supposed to happen. Make sure that they have marshals that they can designate, because you have to start with them. Some people that are experienced enough to be serve in the capacity of marshals, and some people who are already ready to step up and do the combat. So authorized fighters.
Okay. So I have one last question, and actually Her Excellency kind of got where it was. So this combat is a section in the Armored Combat Handbook, Marshal Handbook. Let
me say one thing, that will be moving.
Okay.
I'm finishing the draft now to move it into a handbook of its own. So
okay.
It'll be moving out.
So that answers one of my questions, I think. So if it was Crown Tournament and there were two combatants that were authorized in this form, could they fight this form as part of the Crown Tournament?
No.
Okay. I didn't think so, but I wanted to ask. So, and see, that's an emphatic no. There's not even a little gray area.
No, it's under armored combat, obviously from its name. It fits under the armored combat world, but it is. It was never intended to replace armored combat or anything else. It's just something else to do alongside of it. As if we were to add a new weapons form, this is more closely resembles that. It's just a different set of weapons, a different set of rules. You're authorized in it, and you go apply.
Right.
And it's an arena.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of rapier, so I would think it's kind of falls in towards not only the cut and thrust program that they brought in a few years ago, different techniques, different and such, along with the cut and thrust grappling program that is now available for kingdoms to get involved with. So it's just an evolution of what the different combat forms have been doing. So.
Yes.
All righty, so I'm going to step away now because I feel like I've used all the good questions. And I'm going to let Bjorn come in. So he'll be here in just a second.
Once again, thank you, Your Grace, for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it, especially since it's Eastern time where you are. So the armored combat with rebated steel blades was technically authorized just a few months after the pandemic. I believe it was July of 2020. So we really didn't have activities going at the time. What are your plans, or what are the plans of your marshalate to coordinate with the various kingdoms to garner more attention and more visibility and more access to the program?
Well, this being one of them, one way to be able to reach out to some kingdoms and touching base with them. I will be sending emails to the Earl Marshals from the respective kingdoms if they're interested in entering the program and explaining a little bit about what they need to do. I know that there are some other kingdoms that are interested in coming in. So working with them to bring them in as part of the program. We do have a Facebook page. It's an unofficial page, SCA Steel Combat, where there's some information available. And then on YouTube under SCA Steel Combat, there's a number of videos available there as well.
Excellent, sir. And I've watched the recourse, I've watched the discourse, the conversations on the Facebook page, plus others, for Rebated Combat with a great interest. and I can see both sides to the issue of plastic armor. Now, I understand this could be controversial. It was a discussion that was had on the page and in other chats. Do you feel that there are coverings or finishes to these kits that would make them acceptable to traditionalists, or are they more to be relegated to the under gambeson usage, if at all, given the adherence? And I think really it looks wonderful to the 10-foot appearance rule that's mentioned in your rules.
Right. There is a 10-foot appearance rule. We want the stuff to look good, so anybody wearing red tennis shoes, that's just not going to make it. Plastic, we used plastic during in the early phases of the development, and we found it made suitable armor. We didn't have any failures in the plastic from being struck. Now, I know it will fail, just like it does with rattan. I mean, it gets hit. It only takes so many hits before it fails. But it just cracks. It's no big deal. You just replace it. So plastic is a material that can be utilized for armor in this combat form.
Well, especially since I know that in the rules it talks about rigid material, and since in rattan rules, some plastics, some thicker kydex and that kind of thing falls under the same purview of being rigid. I just know that some of the folks were talking about the aesthetic and how it might look, and then the compromise being, well, just have a coat of plates under a gambeson, and that way you're still having the same look of a footman in a combat tournament. And so I think that you're saying that it seemed to work okay. And I mean, all rigid materials will eventually fail with repeated hitting. That's kind of what the punishment is. So I just wanted to thank you for answering that one. Now, you did touch on it briefly with Laertes, but one of the questions that I received is that there are some people who are less familiar with steel combat. They haven't watched the steel work as much, or the Battle of Nations, and the things that you borrowed to bring it into a safer paradigm in the SCA. But could you mind, if you have one, what is a layperson's answer denoting the main difference between the long sword and an arming sword, like weight and size and whatnot?
The differences between the two, the primary difference is a side sword is a single-handed weapon. A long sword is a two-handed weapon. That is the principal difference. And then, obviously there's weight. The swords we typically use in single-handed combat weigh 3.2 kilograms. So they're heavy. They're heavier than the typical rattan weapon. And the long sword falls in not so much, it's not so dramatic a weight difference, but there is a little more weight there to have to deal with.
Now, I believe in watching some of the videos that you had, one of your single swords, your arming sword, you had a basket that's like the Schiavona variety. Is that correct?
I did. I do have a basket on the sword. It's one I made.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
Do you feel that especially for hand protection, that that the basket is as usable as it is in rattan, as opposed to a weapon with cross hilt and a full gauntlet?
Yes, it can be just as protective. Now, be mindful, the basket's only part of the protection because it only covers the fingers and a small degree of the front of the hand. You still have to wear a demigauntlet of some kind to be able to pick up the back of your hand and your wrist. So the basket's only a small part of that overall protection.
Thank you. Now, for the folks that use rattan, but haven't done any of the rebated steel work, would you mind telling folks how does the rebated sword sit in the hand as it differs from rattan, or how does, because obviously there is an actual edge as opposed to just a piece of tape. So how does it feel when you are striking an opponent? How does it sit?
That's a rather complex question. The first thing is when you pick them up and you handle them, if you've ever handled a sword, it's okay. It feels like a sword. That's as far as where the similarity ends. When you swing a piece of rattan, it doesn't matter if you're exactly edge on. It's still going to transfer the bulk of its energy, and it's not going to slide. If you take a edged weapon and you hit off edge, it will turn in your hand and glance. The other thing is a piece of rattan, if you're familiar with the term spline, which is how much energy it takes to bend an object in any direction. A piece of rattan has the same spline roughly in every direction, and it's pretty stiff. A sword has a great spline from front to back, but it's very poor from side to side. So when you attempt, the first thing I ran into that I could not do with a sword that I could with rattan was an offside body shot. Reason being, when you brought it over the flat of the blade bends and starts toward the ground, and you can't pull it out. And I since learned to do it, but it took me a while to change the way in which I throw the blow to stop that bend in the weapons.
When you're using an arming sword, can you sufficiently or adequately throw a wrap?
You can. The ability to throw a wrap is going to be based on the configuration of your gauntlet, as to whether your gauntlet will allow enough bend in your wrist to be able to throw a wrap. That's a limitation.
I just seeing the mechanics of it, it does seem to be something that hand placement seems to be far more critical in the Rebated program. And I honestly think it probably would improve the techniques of those of us when we get back into rattan.
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing that you do in Rebated steel that's not going to improve your combat in rattan, because you have to learn edge control. And there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Oh, and the other difference is a piece of rattan doesn't vibrate. A steel sword does. And if you hit wrong and get a vibration going in it, they can be challenging to hold on to.
Now, so the arming swords, there is a lanyard, but just because of the necessities of having a two-handed weapon, there is not a lanyard on the two-handed weapons?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. My final question to you, Your Grace, is for the novice fighter, or for the fighter who's maybe only been doing rattan for a few years, what things should they work on to be adequately prepared for rebated combat that might surpass what they would do in rattan?
Let me answer your question just a little differently. Okay. The training that you need is not that alien to what would be done in rattan fighting. I mean, someone could come in and start fresh in Rebated steel and fight from there, transition over to rattan if they would like to, but they can. Remember what I said earlier, in that blow force is not a requirement for a blow to be counted. So fighters who are not as strong, lesser in stature, find it a little easier to fight with the Rebated steel because they don't have to hit hard. There is no such thing as calling a blow light. If you land it, it scores.
Thank you so much, sir. I do appreciate it, Your Grace, for taking your valuable time, especially on the East Coast, to answer these questions. And with that, I want to hand it back to Master Laertes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, stuck with me again. So, all right. So, fascinating. It's fascinating to me. I will say, I think there'll be, when this gains traction and rolls out for more kingdoms, I think there'll be some interesting conversations in the chivalry meetings coming up about stuff. So,
there will be. One other point I would like to make that we didn't touch on. We kept meticulous records the entire time during the experiment. And we have kept records to since then. And with the rules we were given, we have drawn a little blood. That has happened. We have not broken any bones. And we've had a couple of bruises. In my fighting, I very rarely ever take a bruise, ever, fighting with this stuff. And it's not like you fight and don't get hit. You're going to get hit.
Right.
But we had our injury rate has been almost nil. And the two worst injuries we've had were because somebody let their finger drift out from underneath of a gauntlet, which is the same type of injury that happens in rattan.
Right. Right. Well, cool. So we've now come to the part of the evening where we like to play a little trivia game with our guests. So if you'll indulge us, Bjorn, what's the name of the game this week?
His Grace's game is Why Don't We Steal Away?
That's right. We're going to ask you about 1970s hits. No, we're not going to. Although that would have been a good one. Okay, so considering we're doing still combat, I'm going to ask you trivia questions about steel. So it's mainly true or false. We'll keep you score, but again, you can't do as bad as someone that's been on the show before who got 0 out of 10. We won't mention her name. Anyway, so you ready to play along? Super easy. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you seem really excited. Okay, so here's one. Okay, how about this? Less than 50% of steel is recycled in America each year. True or false?
You asked me to agree or disagree.
Is it less than 50 or greater than 50?
Less than 50.
No, it's actually almost 69% of steel is recycled.
Really?
More than paper, aluminum, plastic, and glass combined. Who knew? Okay, true or false? The United States is the top leading, well, I guess you would be the leading if you were the top leading producer of steel in the world.
True.
That false. It's actually, we're number 3, behind Japan and China. Those people.
Okay.
That's okay.
I'm doing really good here.
Oh, no, believe me, you'll get one at least. Let's see. Steel was first used for skyscrapers when they built the Empire State Building in 1930. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
Oh, well, at least you're consistent. No, that one's false.
Okay. If I say
actually,
true enough times, law of averages will catch up with me.
Exactly. Actually, it was first used in 1884 to build the home insurance building in Chicago. So if you're ever in Chicago, you can see the first steel building. Okay, here we go. True or false? Because of the iron and steel in the Eiffel Tower, it grows by 2 feet during the summer.
True.
Oh, no, false. It grows by 6 inches. It grows by 6 inches. Okay, here we go. True or false? More than 600 steel cans are recycled every second in the United States.
600 steel cans.
More than.
Sure. True.
Oh, see, you got one.
I got one.
Nice.
I told you if I stayed with it, law of averages would catch up with me.
Okay, so daily, who knew all this? This was under fun facts about steel. I'm having fun. Daily steel production is astronomically high. True or false? To put things in perspective, 548 Eiffel Towers could be built with the production of steel in one day.
Around
True.
the world?
Yes.
False.
Oh, so close. True.
Should have stayed true.
Yeah, it sure says true. I don't know what I would do with 548 Eiffel Towers.
I don't know. That's an awful lot of metal.
Isn't that crazy? Okay, so last one, but you've gotten one, so you're still not the worst we've had. Okay, so here we go. True or false? Refrigerators made before 2001 contain over 100 pounds of steel.
I won't say true.
That is true. You got 2, see? But yeah, I mean, obviously in the 50s for Indiana Jones, they're made out of lead. But you did good. I mean, like I said, it's never the game, it's the playing of it that people watch. So. Well, this has been fascinating. It really has, because again, I watched it kind of evolve from afar, and seeing it spread and become what it is. So I think it kind of shows how the SCA is evolving, not only in the armor combat field, but overall, where they're expanding what is allowed to bring in items and combat and pursuits that are even more fit under the umbrella of historical recreation and combat as more like it would be, as opposed to how it evolved from the beginning of what we did. So it's interesting to see, and just from my selfish viewpoint, it's going to be interesting to watch if it gains traction and grows across the known world. So anyway, that was me. Thank you for your time.
Well, you're certainly welcome. And anyone that has questions feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy.
What's a good email to reach out to you on?
Well, you can use the society one for the Deputy Marshal, Rebated Steel at sca.org, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's what it is too. I'll put it up here towards the end. But thank you for your time. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And I do appreciate you coming on the show and taking time with us. Best of luck. And I know you put a lot of work into it, so I hope it takes off successfully and safely as you hope it does. So thank you again. Have a great evening. Hopefully we'll see each other in person at some point. So have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. I mean, I know that out here and in the West, they had a lot of the chivalry and associated people take part in Battle of Nations over the years. So I can see how that might be able to translate in building in the base that they'll need to establish the program in the SCA.
One of the things that I really like about what His Grace and the other people that were working on the Rebated program did is it's specifically listed in the rules, certain things like, you know, the grappling is not there. The percussive shots with anything other than the weapon itself are not there. So there's no shield punching. And if you've watched Battle of Nations, you've seen some people do like basically flying kicks and full on punches with bucklers and full shields. So that they took the dynamism of the style of combat, but made it far more in keeping with what the SCA does as far as safety. I think that they really do have the best of both worlds. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the people here in Caid and the people on the West Coast do once we, as he was saying, having that warm passover of marshals may not happen, but knowing how dedicated our people are here, I'm really excited to see it take off on this part of the coast. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to reach out to whatever deputy is assigned within kingdom, in our kingdom, or one of our neighboring ones, well, most of our neighboring ones, and get them on to talk about the program. So anyway, we have another person on the East Coast that has been patiently waiting. So who do we have coming up next?
We have our own, she was here many years ago. We have Sayyida Laila al-Sanna. She is in the East Kingdom now. She is one of the co-event stewards of the Bardic War. She was the second Bard of Caid after she was the first person to take the mantle when Mistress Fenella Harper did the very first Bard of Caid competition after she had taken it herself. So we're very fortunate to have Laila with us this evening.
All righty, well, let's bring her on. If she didn't take a nap, I mean, we kind of got talking. Oh, she's there.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
So nice to see you. I'm great, and I'm happy to see folks from my original kingdom.
Well, you can say the best kingdom, but that's fine.
I'm afraid that I've now served as kingdom champion in 2 kingdoms, and I have divided loyalties, and I have to walk a very careful path.
Well, we know what you really think, though. That's fine. So that's a fun hat.
Thank you. It's a Persian Taj.
It's like you have a big exclamation point.
That's exactly what it's like, and I love it.
So
and if you know me, you know I should have an exclamation point above my head at all times. It's
awesome.
only reasonable.
So for those who don't know, where do you currently reside?
I currently reside in the Crown Province of Ostgard in the Kingdom of the East. So that's the New York area, for those who are not familiar.
Like New York City area?
Yes.
Okay.
New York City, that's right.
Is it close to the White Way?
I am not in White Way. I'm in the subdivisions. I'm in the canton of Broken Bridge, which is Brooklyn.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in the SCA?
Oh, I've been in the SCA since I was 13 years old.
Oh, so like 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. I started in the SCA living in the Barony of Western Seas, which is Hawaii, for those who don't know it. That's where I grew up. And no one in my family was in the SCA. So I didn't get to go to real events for my first 5 years. I only got to go to practices because my mom was not super comfortable with the whole situation. But I continued. What was that?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm hearing other things in the background. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
I'm going to mute Bjorn because he's probably like building a castle or something. Okay.
Could be. So yes. No, there's are you not hearing anything?
I do not.
I'm
hear
so
you.
sorry. It's super distracting because it's very loud and I don't know where it's coming from. So strange. Okay, I'm going to try to just ignore the conversation that's going on in the background that no one else hears except me, which is very strange. All right. Where was I? Help me out.
Hawaii, and your parents
right.
didn't take you to
I grew
that.
up in Hawaii when I went to college in California in 1998. And I was finally able to attend on a larger basis. That was when I got much more involved in the SCA. So yeah, I spent my first 15 years in the SCA in Caid.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
And were you always interested in the bardic performances, or?
Yes, that was absolutely my main interest from the get-go. I'm a performing artist in my mundane life also. I'm a professional musical theater composer and an opera singer. So for me, the SCA was a really interesting place to explore styles of music that I had never really gotten into before. But I mean, I just experienced life through music a lot. So it made sense that Bardic was a major part of my SCA activity. I tried my hand at fighting very, very briefly. And it was not, it didn't suit me, which is all to the good because I'm in a wheelchair now. So it would have been terribly disappointing if I couldn't do that anymore.
Well, if you sing opera, you and Bjorn should get together and do a traveling show. That would be awesome.
I would love to do that. Bjorn has one of my favorite voices in the world. I love him so much.
Yeah, he keeps it in a box. So do you like to write your own pieces, or do you perform your favorite pieces? How does that work for you?
So interestingly, I have not done an enormous amount of writing in the SCA. I mean, I've done some. I probably have a dozen SCA songs that I've written, but most of my SCA music is period music. And I'm in an area of period music that's very controversial and that documentation for is very complicated. I know it doesn't sound like there would be such a thing, but actually I have two main interests musically in the SCA. One of them is Ladino music and the other is early opera. And there are different issues with each of those. Ladino music is primarily passed down through oral tradition, and we have only a handful of extant pieces from period that are provably in period. And for the remainder of the Ladino repertoire, the only way to document it is using an anthropological documentation method that is not accepted in all circles. So it's a very controversial area because there is a question as to whether any individual piece is period, and that's a big discussion. The other area of study for me, the early opera, is controversial primarily because I use the 1650 extension, which we use for a lot of bardic performances and events. And there's a lot of people who have mixed feelings about expanding SCA period to 1650. I'm a strong believer in it because it started out, the SCA started out as having a 1650 deadline, and it's gone back and forth a few times over the decades. And I think the 1650 is really important for culinary artists, for bardic performers, and more than any of that, for people who do non-European studies. I know some people who are particularly interested in Mesoamerican studies, for instance, and they have virtually no documentation until right around 1600. So that 1650 extension creates space for those things to exist, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I might have a vested interest in it going to 1650 myself.
I could see that. I could see how that might be interesting to you as well. So yeah, both of my areas are a little bit on the edge of what people consider SCA. But I have a partner who is well known as a writer of music of the modern Middle Ages. Oh. So if any of you remember Lorienne from back in the day, also in Caid, Lorienne, Red Lorienne of Oak River, I believe was her full name then, although she's going by a different name now.
I was going to say the people I don't remember, Bjorn remembers. So I don't remember that one, but Bjorn does.
But she is in fact a writer and performer of primarily music of the modern Middle Ages. So as a household, we cover a lot of territory.
That's amazing. Speaking of doing stuff within the SCA, you're how are you involved in the upcoming Bardic War?
I am one of the people who inadvertently started this thing. And as a result, I am also one of the co-event stewards. Huh? The Bardic War started as trash talk during a performance. Trash talk in chat during a Zoom performance. That is how it started.
Well, I've never met a bard that does trash talk. That's shocking to me. So you'll have a lot of stuff coming up. It starts next Friday or Saturday?
Yes.
When does it start?
It starts next Saturday.
And it runs through the week, right? It runs through the following weekend.
Yeah, it's from the 15th to the 23rd. We have events every day. There are more events on the weekends than on the weekdays, but there are things on the weekdays as well. Most of our events are going to be available to watch from the YouTube channel. So even if you miss the actual event time, you can catch up on the events you were interested in later, sort of like if you recorded the Olympics. And you just have to tell everybody, don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me, that sort of thing. Although we're not actually announcing winners in individual categories anyway. That's not how it's working.
Right.
We're averaging scores together, and it's a very complicated mathematical model that I did not create.
Right. I think the Russian judge will score low. So
always. That's how it works.
Well, and so there's not only activities that are related to the war points per se, but there's more silly stuff going on, and
yes,
and hangouts and classes and all that kind of stuff. It's a bevy of bardic activity, right?
And not just bardic activity either. Oh. There are classes on a full range of topics, many of which are not at all related to bardic. There are social rooms that will be open. The idea was, when you go to a normal war, the focus is on fighting events, but there are other things, right? You've got classes on arts, you've got bardic circles, you've got, sometimes there's a war point that's for arts and sciences or for bardic. So we took that and we just flipped it around. So we have 35 war points, and 30 of them are for performing arts, but the other 5 are for martial activities and arts and sciences and volunteering and that sort of thing.
Awesome. Oh!
I'm sorry.
Holy, I'm sorry. I went long.
No, that was my phone. I apologize.
Well, let's think about Bardic War. I'm sure most everyone on staff is extremely excited about, what is it? The game show.
Absolutely.
I had
Game show sounds great to me.
I had to
I'm
put that
excited.
out there. Anyway, so I understand you have two pieces you're going to perform for us this evening. What's the first piece that you want to tell us about?
The first piece I'm going to sing is called Nani Nani. It is one of those handful of Ladino songs that is actually written down in period. It was written in a Spanish book by De Salinas called De Musica. And I love this piece because two things. Musically, what I really enjoy about it is that it is a largely improvised piece. It has a baseline melody, but then there's just an enormous amount of ornamentation and improvisation that goes on around it. But I also really enjoy the topicality of it, because the lyrics of this song essentially translate to there's a mother who is rocking her baby, and she's saying, "Sleep, sleep, little baby," and the mother's son, he's so small, he's going to grow up big and have a wonderful life. And then the father shows up at the door and bangs on the door and says, "Open the door for me. I'm really tired from plowing the fields." And the wife says, "I'm not letting you in. You were not plowing the fields. You were with your girlfriends.
Oh, he was
You were
plowing
plowing something else." And she won't let him into the house because her husband has been cheating on her. So that is the story of Nani Nani. Perhaps all too familiar story.
I would say next time start that off with spoilers, because now we know how it ends. But,
well, yes, but since I doubt a lot of your listeners speak Ladino, I imagine it would be very difficult to follow. Now, I will say, if you speak Spanish, you will almost understand it, or you'll understand it, but it'll sound like it's pronounced wrong or has weird grammar.
Oh, it's like me taking Spanish in high school. So
Ladino is the Yiddish of Spanish, right? What Yiddish is to German, Ladino is to Spanish. It's almost Spanish, written in Hebrew writing with Hebrew vocabulary mixed in, and the pronunciation's a little different, and the grammar's a little different.
Oh, cool. Well, let's turn the floor over to you for your performance.
Sure. I wish I could figure out what was making that noise, because I'm still hearing it. Like I'm talking through another conversation, and it's super weird. Nani, 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 nani che el hijo de la madre, mi chico se haga grande. Ay, dormite, mi alma, dormite, mi vida, que tu padre viene con mucha alegría. Ay, abrimes la puerta, abrimes mi alma, que vengo muy cansado de agarrar las puertas. Ay, ay, l'abrir no vos abrió, no venís cansado, sino que venís donde nuevo amor. Nani, nani, mia madre, de fosse grande. Ni es más hermosa, ni es más valida, ni ella llevaba más de las mismas joyas. Nani,
Wow, that was gorgeous. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. I love Latino music. It's so passionate and it makes use of quarter tones and these like weird slides that we don't do in Western music. It's a ton of fun. It's closely related to period Arabic music.
You know, actually, I don't want to sound like, oh, he's one of those guys. But yeah, that's what it reminded me of listening to it, because we've had the good fortune to have some of those performers on our show over the past year.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's like, well, it sounds like it's in that realm.
Yeah, very much.
And we're lucky you have a second piece you want to perform for us tonight.
I
You want to
do,
tell us
and
about
this
that?
is completely in the other direction. This is actually a piece of early opera.
Oh.
It's from an opera called Incorinazione di Popeya by Claudio Monteverdi. It was first performed in 1643. And this particular aria is called Disprezza Regina. It's sung by Ottavia, who is Octavius's wife, Ottavia.
Oh.
It's a Roman story, the story of Popeya and Octavio. And at this time, Octavio is leaving his wife for a younger woman. And I know, right? So she said, apparently I'm into angry woman songs today, because this is another angry woman song. This one is Ottavia. The main gist of the aria is men, we raise them up as our sons, and then they go off and hurt other women. This is our plight as women, is to deal with men who will inevitably hurt us. It's very sad.
Well, I don't have anything to say on that, so I'm just going to watch it perform.
All right, so this is Disprezza Regina. Normally I would try to do this with accompaniment, but one of the things about period opera is that a lot of it is what they call recitative, which means it's done sort of freeform, and it's very difficult to do with accompaniment unless you have someone live. So this is an a cappella version of Disprezza Regina for everyone's pleasure, hopefully. Disprezzata regina, regina, regina disprezzata, disprezzata regina del monarco romano, afflitta moglie, che fo, ove son, che penso, oh, delle miserabil sesso, se le natura e il cielo liberaci, produci il matrimonio cincatena servi, se concepimo l'uomo, miserabile stesso, al nostro empio tirano formiam la membra, latiamo il carnefici crudeli, che ci scana, ci svena, e siamo costretti per ingegno sorti e voi medesimi fabbricar la morte. Nerone in più Nerone, Dio, Dio, Noreto besamiata per sempre maledetta dal cordoglio miei. Dove sei? Il braccio di Popeya, il braccio di Popeya tu ne muri, felici e godi, felici e godi. Intanto il frequente cader de pianto miei por vacua se formando onde l'odio di spicchi il cui pomeri dentro alle tue delizie i miei martiri. Destin, si stai lassù, già ho scelto vita, se per punirne rode, fulmini, tu non hai. D'impotenza t'accuso, d'ingiustizia circolpo, hai troppo altri, e me penta, supremo e se felisco, in taciturne angosce il mio tormento.
Wow, that was incredible. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I made a mistake when I was introducing it. I said Octavio when I meant Nerone, by the way. Nero. It's about the Emperor Nero.
Yeah,
Anyone who knows their Roman history will know that I was really dumb right there.
I didn't want to correct you and make you look bad. I mean, I knew. I knew right offhand, but
Well, of course you did, Laertes. You know everything.
But if I don't, Bjorn knows it, right? So
True. If you don't know it, Bjorn knows it.
yeah. So, speaking of which, I'm sure Bjorn wants to make a comment. So, hey, Bjorn.
Absolutely lovely. I think proto opera is one of my specialties as well, and I'm very fond of Monteverdi as a bridge composer, someone who really brought the Renaissance into the Baroque. This is the first opera, actually, that is of great note that strayed from the formula of doing things about mythology. The coronation of Popeya was based upon a real event where Nero cast aside his wife Octavia for his mistress Popeya, and they end on the good part, because historically that union doesn't go over very well. not for anybody. Let's be honest. Anyone around Nero had a bad time. But it was, and it's also the first opera that ever received a revival. In those times, once a piece was done, it was done and the new thing came about. But because I think Monteverdi's name being associated with it, it had a revival about 10 years later, and then again, and then it was something now, even to this day, as considered a literary and scholarship work of great import in Italian music. So you did an excellent.
It is pretty
job.
marvelous. Thank you.
It really is.
And by the way, to anyone who is watching your show who is interested in early opera, I am the artistic director of Opera dell'Est, which is the East Kingdom's early opera company. But during pandemic times, it has expanded far beyond the East Kingdom, and we welcome people from all kingdoms to join us for virtual concerts and to be a part of our group. If you're interested, you can look up the group on Facebook. It's Opera, Opera. DELL''ESTE. Opera, or is there an E at the end? I don't think there's, I don't remember. There may or may not be an E at the end, but it's Opera dell'Est, and we have a Facebook group. Feel free to join us. We'll be doing 3 oratorios in a live concert in September.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Well, be sure, if you could, when after the show, drop the link in this chat on Facebook.
I will.
And people can find it that way too. That'd be awesome. But
absolutely.
What an incredible performance. Thank you so much. I mean, it's like, so nice.
Well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad you guys are doing this show. This has been a great time. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you at Bardic War and getting up once we wrap it up. So, all right.
It's always good to reconnect with you, my dear friend.
Yes,
thank you so
great
much.
to see you again.
It's so good to see both of you. I miss you both.
Thank you. We miss you. And have a great evening. Again,
you too.
Hopefully we'll see each other in person at some point. But have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Wow. I was just kind of blown away just sitting here watching it. Even with the little funky little interference that was coming in. It was an amazing performance. Oh my God.
It's a beautiful piece, and she's an excellent singer, and she always has been. She really set the bar when she became the second Bard of Caid. She really, when Finella and the Crown and the people that chose what was going to happen, I really think that that Laila helped establish how challenging the Bard of the Kingdom was going to be, and her scholarship continues. So I'm very happy that we're going to be working with her and the other people that are running the Bardic War. It's going to be a lot of fun this next week or so.
And I'm glad we got the Angry Woman medley. So I mean, that was nice too. So anyway, so next week, we're trying to work our schedule best for all the different events that are coming up with the reopening of the SCA and the Kingdom, and we're going to be talking to the Caid Crown here soon, along with different officers as we start to ramp up activities here. Along with, of course, next week is Bardic War, and we're going to have a lot of special features next Monday. So you need to make sure, and people here might not know anything that may not be live on the show. More often than not, it's the very first time Bjorn's ever seen it. So his reaction is the true reaction, and I live for it actually. So we have a lot of special things coming up for next week. Really be sure to come in, check out what's going on with Bardic War, and you have some more performers coming up, Bjorn.
Yes, I do. Once again, we have another one of the generals from the. I believe our next performer is coming from the Eastern Alliance from Atlantia, who will be joining. And so we're really excited about that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Another performer. I think the Bardic War has just really reinvigorated a lot of the performers. As you have said many times, performing to a small piece of glass is extremely challenging. And the people that are doing this for the Bardic War and during this whole time of the pandemic, it's really pushed and made a lot of performers grow, and we are the beneficiaries of that growth. It really has been fantastic.
And don't forget, this coming Saturday, what is it? I don't know. I just like saying it. So if you want to be a contestant, send us an email at livefromcaid@gmail.com. But until then, Bjorn, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Like you had a choice. It's good to see you, my friend.
Always good to see you, Laertes.
And everyone else out there, be sure to join us next Monday when once again we will be live from Caid.
From Caid.
We'll see you then. Thanks for
Bye,
watching.
everybody.